Imagine watching a world, a whole way of life, literally disappear right before your eyes. That's not science fiction. It's the real-life story of Charles D. Brower. We're going to dive into how a young guy from New York ended up living an epic saga of survival in one of the most extreme places on Earth and saw it change forever. 57 years. Let that number sink in for a second. That's how long Charlie Brower lived north of the Arctic Circle. We're not talking about a few expeditions. This was his life. More than half a century in a world of ice, snow, and profound isolation. It's a scale that's just hard to wrap your head around today. And this quote? This really tells you everything about the man. When he was almost 80 years old, friends told him, "Charlie, maybe it's time to come home, to retire." And his response was just, "But retire? Why?" For him, there was nothing to retire from. The North wasn't just a place he lived. It had become who he was. So how in the world does a journey like this even begin? Let's go back to the very start, to a single decision that would completely change the entire course of his life. You know, he wasn't some grand explorer setting out for glory. He was just a kid, not even 21 yet, and he was totally done with life as a sailor after his ship nearly burned down. He actually swore he was done with lonely places. But then an offer came up. Go to Alaska, look for coal for a whaling company. He took it, probably thinking it was just another short-term gig. He had absolutely no idea he was waving goodbye to the modern world for good. The world Brower sailed into was something else entirely. It was like a place that time forgot, almost completely untouched by the Industrial Revolution that was busy transforming, well, the rest of the planet. To really get a sense of how isolated this was, just think about what else was happening in 1883. The Brooklyn Bridge opened in his home city, this incredible monument to modern engineering. Meanwhile, Charlie Brower was stepping ashore into a culture whose tools and traditions hadn't changed for thousands of years. He hadn't just left New York, he had sailed clear off the map of the 19th century. What he found there were the Inuit people, living in this incredible rhythm with their environment. Their entire existence was shaped by the seasons, by the hunt, and by a really complex web of spiritual beliefs. For example, check this out. After they hunted and killed a massive bowhead whale, the first thing they'd do is pour fresh water into its blowhole. The belief was that the whale's spirit, after a life in the salt ocean, deserved a final, fresh drink as a sign of respect. It was this deep connection that ensured the whales would return for future hunts. Now, for Brower, this wasn't just some interesting cultural observation. To stay alive, he had to unlearn everything he thought he knew and fully embrace the ancient, hard-won wisdom of the Inuit. His life literally depended on it. And that was the million-dollar question, right? How does a kid from the city survive in a place where one wrong move means you freeze to death? All his street smarts, his skills as a sailor, they were basically useless here. He was a total rookie. His real education came in brutal, practical lessons. Early on, he got lost by himself in a thick, disorienting fog for 3 days straight. That was lesson number 1, taught by the land itself. Then, on hunts with the Inuit, he learned from them, watching how they built these incredible snow shelters that were shockingly warm inside. But maybe the biggest step was learning to trust. For his first big trip up to Point Barrow, he had to put his life 100% in the hands of his local guides, trusting them to read the snow and ice in a landscape that, to him, looked like nothing but endless white. But here's the turn. Just as Brower was adapting to this ancient world, his old world came crashing in. Whalers, traders, missionaries, they started to show up, and the collision between these two cultures was fast, it was dramatic, and, all too often, it was tragic. I mean, this collision was profound. You had a culture built around hunting for survival, suddenly face to face with the idea of hunting for commercial profit. You had ancient spiritual beliefs about the world clashing with brand new religions brought by missionaries. A world based on community survival was suddenly flooded with individual trade goods. And maybe worst of all, natural resilience was no match for new diseases and potent alcohol. This one word, hooch, pops up again and again in Brower's story, and it's heartbreaking. It was this raw, powerful liquor that the natives quickly learned to make from supplies the traders brought in, like flour and molasses, and its effect was just devastating. It completely unraveled their social fabric, leading to violence and the breakdown of traditions. And this number, it represents the sheer human cost of this collision. An entire inland tribe, about 200 people, came to the coast for a festival. While they were there, they were exposed to measles, a disease they had no immunity to. Brower later followed their trail back home and found their bodies all along the riverbanks. As far as he could tell, not a single person survived. An entire community just wiped out. So you see, Charlie Brower didn't just live in the Arctic. He became this incredible human bridge between two completely different eras. He stood there and witnessed the very end of a timeless way of life and the chaotic, messy birth of a new and uncertain future. Towards the end of his life, these were the sounds that echoed in his memory. Think about that. The beat of his shaman's drum, the massive, booming sound of shifting ice, the final breath of a hunted whale. These aren't just descriptions. They are the sounds of a world that is now completely gone, and he was one of the last people to have heard them. And that really leaves us with this final massive question, doesn't it? Brewer's life forces us to look at the whole idea of progress. Sure, he saw medicine and better tools arrive, but he also had a front row seat to the destruction of a culture, of a people's spiritual connection to their land. His story isn't just a great adventure tale, it's a profound and timeless question about the real price of change.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're jumping into something pretty extraordinary, actually. It's a deep dive into a life spent almost 60 years north of the Arctic Circle, all based on this one memoir, 50 Years Below Zero.
Yeah, it's the story of Charles D. Brower,
Yeah?
an American guy who, well, he was supposed to go to Annapolis, the whole gold-braided promotion thing. But he ditched that for just pure adventure, high and free adventure, as he put it. And he basically became the Arctic man, living way up there, 1,100 miles from the pole.
Wow, mostly at Point Barrow, right, from 1883.
That's right, from 1883 right up until the book came out in, 1944? 57 years.
Yeah.
An incredible stretch of time.
It really is. And the start of it all is, well, it's deeply ironic, isn't it? You mentioned his background. But when he first lands in San Francisco in 83, he's not looking for adventure at all. Quite the opposite.
No, not at all. He'd just finished 7 years at sea, and it ended horribly with this terrifying fire on his ship, the C.C. Chapman. He describes the pitch melting in the deck, hatches blowing off. I mean, real trauma, fire and, isolation.
So he gets off the boat in San Francisco thinking, okay, that's it. No more lonesome places for me. That's literally what he thought. He even turns down a job offer from the city fire department.
Yeah, can you imagine? Because the fire trauma was still so raw. He just wanted, solid ground and people around. Civilization.
But then just a few months later, something shifts.
It does. That lure of the unknown, the far places, it just pulls him back in. And he signs on with this small group, just 4 guys, sent by the Pacific Steam Whaling Company.
To look for coal, of all things, near Point Barrow, Alaska.
Exactly. It's this almost accidental choice, looking for fuel, that ends up defining his entire life. He becomes the Arctic man because of coal prospecting.
So let's dig into that a bit.
Yeah.
Why coal? Why were they sending people way up there for that?
Well, the company needed local fuel for their steam whalers, obviously, to cut down on costs. But the real money, the thing they were protecting, that was whalebone.
Right, for corsets.
Yeah, primarily ladies' corsets. And this stuff was selling for over $4.50 a pound back in the 1880s. That's huge money.
So the coal was just support for the main industry.
Precisely. The whale oil was valuable too, but the bone, that was the gold mine. They needed to keep those operations running smoothly.
Okay, so they head up north, this small prospecting team looking for coal, and
it's a bust, almost right away. They get near Cape Lisburne, find these huge coal veins at Corwin Bluff, 14 feet wide.
Yeah.
Looks promising,
Oh.
but the cliff face is just totally unstable. They try to actually mine some of it, and the whole thing just collapses. A massive avalanche. Mission failed.
So the leader, this guy Haverside, he packs up and heads back to San Francisco with the bad news.
Yep. But Brower and 2 others, George Levitt and Henry Wolfe, they decide to stay. Just stay and hold the station.
And that's the moment. He basically never leaves the Arctic Circle again after that, except for a few visits way later.
It's incredible. Suddenly they're completely cut off.
Yeah.
And their first job is just figure out how to survive and deal with the local culture.
Which came with some pretty serious warnings, didn't it, from the other white crews?
Oh, yeah. The experienced guys warned these greenhorns, as they call them, about the Eskimos, especially about approaching villages. If a group of men showed up without women and children, it was seen as suspicious, like maybe they were hostile.
Makes sense. And Brower runs smack into these cultural rules and beliefs almost immediately.
Yeah.
Like with the beluga hunting.
That's a great example. He sees the women pouring fresh water on the blowhole of the dead whale, the whitefish. And to him, it probably looks like, just superstition.
Right.
But the explanation is fascinating. It's like the fish live in salt water, right? So you give them a drink of fresh water out of respect before you cut them up. Because if you don't, its spirit will warn the other belugas, and you won't catch any more.
So it's not just a ritual, it's like a spiritual conservation practice embedded in the culture.
Exactly. It's resource management through respect and ritual.
Yeah.
But then there was the much darker advice about the tuckaroo. That one's chilling.
Yeah. Tell us about that.
Well, his Eskimo guides warned him that a white man would die in the cold weather, the tuckaroo. And this came from a real incident. Apparently, some Eskimos had rescued a dying white deserter sometime before. But if someone died inside their house, their igloo or dwelling, yeah, the belief was that the spirit would sort of haunt the place, make it unusable. Abandon the house forever was the phrase Brower recorded.
So losing the house, which is critical for survival.
Exactly. It's a community asset.
Right.
So to save the house, they put the dying guy outside in the cold.
Okay.
And when he didn't die quickly enough, well, they mashed his head in with rocks.
Wow. That's incredibly brutal. But the logic, from their perspective...
It's ruthless survival logic. One life versus the essential shelter for the group. And Brower, hearing this, his reaction wasn't moral judgment. It was pure pragmatism. He just wrote, I resolve not to get sick.
Good plan. You can see how quickly he had to adapt. Even his gear, right? The standard stuff wasn't going to cut it.
Nope. He very quickly started using Eskimo survival tech. Like for water, forget canteens freezing up. He used a seal's hind flipper. They hollow it out, dry it, then fill it with snow and a bit of water.
And carry it where?
Under the Attica, the big parka, right next to your body. Your body heat melts the snow gradually. Instant, portable, non-freezing water source.
Yeah.
Ingenious.
Absolutely ingenious. Okay, so he's surviving, he's learning. Let's talk about his deeper integration. He meets a major figure early on, right? A Tungara.
Yes. As Brower treks solo towards Utqiagvik, he encounters a Tungara who is the head man of Tigara. And this guy is formidable. Brower describes him as a surly, thick-set brute. The whole village was terrified of him. They believed he was the strongest man alive and had, like, magic powers, occult powers.
Ruled by fear, basically.
Yeah, totally. And he wasn't subtle about it. He actually showed Brower his collection.
Oh, right, the grizzly collection. I remember reading that.
Yeah. A private rack where he kept the dried bodies of 4 men he'd personally murdered. Like trophies?
Out there.
Apparently so. Brower even noted that one of them looked like a fresh arrival. The Tungara was making a very clear statement about his power.
That's terrifying. How did Brower navigate that? How did he avoid becoming, number 5?
Well, he seems to have shown value quickly. He joined a Tungara's whaling crew, 8 guys, including Brower. By participating, showing respect for the process, he found his place. And it meant he got to witness these incredible spring whaling rituals firsthand.
Including the devil driving.
Oh, yeah. Really intense stuff. 3 devil doctors, a Tungara being one, would strip to the waist and just drum for hours until they collapsed like they were dead.
And
then they'd be revived and give these prophecies about where the whales would be, guiding the hunt.
Wow. And there was another ritual just before they launched the boat involving water again?
Yes, connecting right back to that beluga belief. A Tungar's wife would perform the final rite. She'd take her bucket of fresh water and pour it over the bow of the Umiak, the big sealskin boat, just as it was put on the edge of the ice.
Same reason, so the whale doesn't warn the others.
Exactly the same logic. Appease the spirit, ensure future success.
And when they actually made a kill, how did that work? Was it just a Tungara's whale?
No, it was very communal. The whale itself was divided pretty equally among all the boat crews involved, but the labor, that was strictly divided by gender.
Okay.
The women had the job of cutting up and hauling all the meat and blubber back home. They used these big knives called cauleras. Brower notes it was explicitly called the women's job.
And the valuable whale bone.
That was divided up separately later, presumably among the boat owners or crews.
It's fascinating how structured it all was, but even a Tungara, the headman, the devil doctor, he wasn't above bending the rules for comfort, was he?
No, definitely not. This is a great little anecdote. Despite all the taboos about, foreign objects or fire on the sacred whaling ice.
Yeah.
A Tungara secretly gets Brower to bring his little coal oil stove out onto the ice floe.
Just to make tea.
Just to make tea, a major violation of taboo. And a Tungara apparently just whispers to Brower, don't worry, the whales would never know anything about it.
Incredible. Even the high priest needs his tea break.
It shows that human desire for comfort or maybe novelty starting to creep in, even against deeply held beliefs.
But that contact, the source of the stove and the tea, it also brought much worse things, didn't it? The impact of outside contact, especially shipwrecks, it was devastating.
Oh, absolutely catastrophic in some places.
Yeah.
Brower talks about visiting a place called Sidaru. It was basically a ghost village. Hundreds of empty casks littered the place. What happened was wrecked ships washed ashore. The natives found things like whiskey barrels or medicine chests.
And drank whatever was inside.
Yes, and died from it. Alcohol poisoning, maybe contaminated medicine, who knows? But so many died that the survivors just fled, leaving the bodies unburied in the houses for years.
Just awful. And then came the deliberate introduction of alcohol, the hooch.
Yeah, that was the real killer. Once the recipe for homemade alcohol got out there, possibly through rival traders,
Yeah.
it just ripped through the communities.
How did it impact them beyond the obvious health issues?
It wrecked their economy, too. People started trading valuable resources, like caribou skins needed for clothing, just for the flour and molasses to make more hooch. Brower mentions one year where 3 Eskimos were murdered in drunken conflicts. It got so bad, he and his men had to physically go around smashing the skills with pick handles just to try and stop it.
A desperate measure. And this breakdown, this introduction of alcohol, it even reached the Tungara, right? His downfall is tied into this.
It really is. His story kind of encapsulates the whole tragedy. It starts with tradition, but ends in chaos fueled by hooch. A Tungara's own son, Ulosharoi, beats his wife to death. Why? Because she broke an old whaling taboo, urinating on the ice during her period.
Jeez. So rigid tradition leads to violence.
Which then spirals. That murder kicked off a feud, a cycle of revenge killings. About a dozen people died. And a Tungara himself. By this point, he's apparently weakened by drinking the hooch. He gets shot and wounded while he's sleeping.
And the final act? It's grimly symbolic.
Terribly so. He's lying there, helpless, and one of his own wives, her family, was on the other side of the feud. She finishes him off
What is
with her cholera. The woman's knife, the tool used for processing the whale catch, the strongest man in the world, the powerful devil driver, killed by a woman from his own household using her traditional tool. His authority just completely dissolved.
So the power of the old ways, the devil doctors, it's crumbling because of alcohol and infighting. But then something even bigger happens that really breaks their hold, right?
Yes. A massive epidemic. This was in 1898. There was a big gathering, a dance celebration. Lots of inland tribes came to the coast. And then some kind of sickness hit, probably influenza. It spread like wildfire.
And what did the devil doctors do?
Their solution, based on tradition perhaps, was to tell the sick people to leave the main village, to isolate them. But it was hopeless.
Brower saw the aftermath.
He did. He described seeing maybe 200 or more of these, quote, husky inland Eskimos dead or dying along the rivers as they desperately tried to paddle back home. People were abandoning their sick family members on the riverbanks, just hoping the stronger ones might make it.
Did any?
According to Brower, not one was left alive. Just complete devastation.
And the impact on the shaman's authority.
Shattered. They couldn't stop the sickness. Their rituals failed. People lost faith. It was a major turning point.
Wow. So you have the social, spiritual collapse, and then the economic rub gets pulled out too.
Right on cue. Just as the traditional culture is reeling, the market for their main commodity whalebone completely collapses.
Why? What happened?
Technology changed fashion and transport. Things like thin spring steel and vulcanized rubber came along. They were cheaper, better substitutes for whalebone and corsets.
Oh, the vulcanized rubber and polished steel he mentioned.
Exactly. And at the same time, cars started replacing horse-drawn carriages, so the demand for whalebone whips also dried up. The market just vanished.
Yeah, so Brower, who came for coal instead for whaling, suddenly finds himself in a completely different Arctic. What does he do?
He pivots again. He becomes essentially Mr. Government up there. He takes on roles like U.S. Commissioner, Postmaster. He even ran the draft board for an area covering 60,000 square miles during wartime.
That's incredible. And he also became a kind of historian, right? A collector.
Yeah, he realized he was witnessing the end of an era. He started systematically collecting artifacts, specimens, stories. He supplied major institutions like Dr. Hornaday at the Smithsonian, I think. And he sold something like 20,000 specimens to Vilhjalmur Stefansson, the famous explorer. He was documenting a disappearing world.
And sometimes his collecting solved old mysteries, like the whalebone bow.
That's a fascinating one. He'd heard these old stories, these legends about a special short bow made of whalebone. Super powerful. It was supposedly used for like secret assassinations. You could hide it under your parka, get close, and use a flint-tipped arrow.
Just stories, though.
Until years later, he actually found proof. They discovered a perfectly preserved body in an old ice house. The man was wearing a loonskin suit, and sticking out of his chest, right above the heart, was the broken end of a short, flint-tipped arrow. The legend was real.
Incredible. Connecting oral history to archaeological evidence. And he also found something related to a much more famous mystery, right? The Franklin expedition.
He did, or rather his Eskimo contacts did. They found documents inside a stone cairn near Point Barrow. These papers had been left there 82 years earlier, and they confirmed that Franklin's lost ships, the Erebus and Terror, which vanished searching for the Northwest Passage in 1845, had definitely been in that area.
So Brower's living there connects ancient Inuit history with these huge events from the outside world.
Absolutely. He's this bridge across time and cultures. And by the 1930s, his location, Point Barrow, it becomes important again, but for a new reason. Aviation.
Ah, the polar flyers.
Yeah, guys like Wilkins, Amundsen. Point Barrow was a key stopover or base for Arctic flights. Brower becomes the point man for this new age of exploration.
And this leads to perhaps the most shocking event he witnessed, right? Involving his role as U.S. commissioner.
Yeah, a real collision of his isolated world and, well, global fame and tragedy. August 1935. A plane crashes in a lagoon just 12 miles south of his station. As the local U.S. commissioner, it's Brower's job to go out, investigate, and prepare the bodies for removal.
And the passengers were?
Will Rogers, was probably the most famous entertainer and humorist in America at the time,
Mm.
and Wiley Post, a record-breaking pilot, a huge celebrity in his own right.
Trash crashed right near his station. The world literally landed on his doorstep.
In the most tragic way.
Yeah.
And Brower includes this detail in his memoir. It's so stark. He notes that Will Rogers' body was completely crushed, and that Rogers was wearing a cheap pocket watch, maybe $1.50, just tied to the end of an old string.
Wow. That image. The global icon, the cutting-edge technology of the plane, and this simple, almost childlike detail processed by the man who lived in the Arctic for 50 years.
It kind of sums it all up, doesn't it? Brower's whole life. He was this accidental pioneer, this prospector, whaler, government man, but mostly he was a witness to one of the fastest, most violent cultural and technological shifts imaginable, all happening right in front of him.
57 years of it.
Yeah. He wrote about spending the long, dark winters thinking about the sounds of the past. The rhythmic beat of the devil driver's drum, windswept shouts of a triumphant crew, or mingling with the boom of ice, the dying swish of a bowhead whale. Sounds that were just gone.
He saw the world he joined just completely vanish, its economy, its beliefs.
Especially that economic pillar, the whalebone. So valuable one minute, worthless the next, replaced by rubber and steel.
It really makes you think. We've seen how quickly that essential commodity, the whalebone, just disappeared because of technological change.
Overnight, almost.
Yeah.
The foundation of their world crumbled.
So thinking about Brower's time and everything he saw change, here's something for you to consider. What's our whalebone today? What's that absolutely essential commodity, that thing our modern world completely relies on? Could be data, maybe a specific resource, maybe even something like attention. What is it that could be made obsolete tomorrow by some unexpected shift, some new piece of vulcanized rubber and polished steel, and just pull the rug out from under everything? Something to think about.